measures are working. They are having an effect in helping us curb the spread of the virus, and therefore we do not think there is a need for a further tightening in our overall posture.
Almost 2 weeks into tightened COVID-19 measures, and the number of new community cases has stabilized at 15 infections today. A tampered image circulating online about a dine-in area has been slammed as being done in poor taste. And Jeremy Monteiro breaks into the top 50 US jazz chart in a first for a Singapore musician. We'll be speaking to him. Welcome to The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay. 15 new COVID-19 community cases were reported today. 11 are linked to previous cases, with 8 detected while in quarantine and 3 identified through surveillance. The other 4 local cases are currently unlinked. In addition, there are 15 imported cases, including 8 returning Singaporeans or PRs. More details will be shared later tonight. Finance Minister Lawrence Wong today giving the clearest indication yet that no further tightening of COVID-19 measures will be necessary once Singapore's Phase 2 heightened alert period ends on June 13th. According to Mr. Wong, the multi-ministry task force will be sharing more details when it holds a news conference on Monday.
We are monitoring the situation closely. For now, we believe that the measures are working. They are having an effect in helping us curb the spread of the virus, and therefore we do not think there is a need for a further tightening in our overall posture. But we are monitoring the situation very closely, and we will give a fuller update in terms of our overall assessment of the situation and on possible next moves at the MTF conference on Monday.
Well, what Mr. Wong did announce today was more help for those hardest hit during this period. The enhancements to support measures for businesses and individuals will cost the government $800 million. First, the job support scheme will increase to 50% for sectors where the tightened measures require them to suspend many, if not all, of their operations. For sectors that aren't required to suspend operations but are significantly affected by the tightened measures, JSS support will be enhanced to 30%. Some retailers like supermarkets and online retailers won't be eligible for these enhancements.
COVID-19 is likely to be around for some time, and we will all have a role to play to develop more resilient strategies to adapt to this new environment. The government will continue to help businesses and individuals adapt and transform and create and seize new opportunities. In the private sector, enterprises themselves will need to take a sustainable and collaborative approach to strengthen their industries in the face of major disruptions.
Rental relief will be given to SMEs and non-profit organizations with an annual revenue not more than $100 million who are tenant occupiers of some commercial properties. The government will grant 1 month of rental relief for qualifying tenants in government-owned commercial properties, and for privately owned commercial properties, IRAS will disperse a half-month rental relief cash payout to qualifying tenants as part of the new rental support scheme. Now, while rebates were previously given to landlords to pass down to tenants, Mr. Wong said they will be passing rebates directly to tenants now.
The landlords and tenants came together, the key associations came together, and they supported a code of conduct for fair tenancy. I think that's making good progress. But what has changed this time around is following our last experience where we gave the rebate to the landlords and we asked the landlords to pass it down to tenants, we now, based on that experience, have the data of the tenants themselves. Unlike the last time around, right? Because of the experience last year, we now have the database and the records of tenants themselves. And because of that, we think it's, rather than do it through landlords and then pass down, given that we have the information, it might as well more directly provide the rebates to the tenants and occupiers of these properties.
And a one-off support for lower to middle income employees and self-employed people will be given through a new scheme. Under the COVID-19 Recovery Grant Temporary, those placed on involuntary no-pay leave may receive a one-off payout of up to $700, and people experiencing significant income loss may receive a one-off payout of up to $500. More details on these support measures are all on straitstimes.com. Well, overseas, India's official tally of daily COVID-19 infections has been falling in the past few days, offering hope that its second wave is ebbing. But there are serious concerns that many new infections are not being reported, and this is largely due to a dearth of testing in the countryside. By some estimates, over 60% of the new cases are now surfacing in the villages. Well, our India correspondents like Rohini Mohan will have stories out tomorrow showing the situation in the rural parts of the country. Rohini is here to share more on her piece. Rohini, welcome back. You were in Chamarajanagar, about 175 kilometers from Bangalore. Now, it's one of several rural areas hit by COVID-19. Are you able to describe the situation over there?
Yes, I went to this place, which, as you said, is about actually 5 hours from Bangalore, where I am. And this is a place that on May 3rd saw the death of 24 people, 23 of them who were affected by COVID in the hospital because of an oxygen shortage. Oxygen ran out at midnight, and all of these people who were in the oxygen and ventilator wards just died overnight. And since then, oxygen has been fixed, but it actually highlighted a grave shortage of resources and also the rising number of cases in rural areas. When I went there, I saw every COVID bed occupied, and there were even people that were on the floor attached to oxygen supply. Then there were very few nurses and doctors to handle this number of patients. India has a shortage of doctors with 0.8 for every 1 lakh. For every 100,000 people, and this is even less in rural areas. And this is in South India, where now of the 30 worst hit districts in rural India, now 20 are actually from South India.
Right. Well, let's look at, I guess, the growing crisis in the villages, in the rural parts of India. For a while, India's COVID-19 cases were mainly confined, so to speak, to the big cities, in Delhi, for instance. So you were previously on the show to talk about that. Going forward, and I guess assessing the situation now, how did the virus get into the villages, and were there any measures already in place to prevent such occurrences?
Actually, there was a strong belief that rural areas, because of the open areas and fewer population and less dense villages, a lot of us believed, and the experts believed, that rural India wouldn't be so affected. But ever since lockdown was imposed and after the first wave, there was a drop in cases, there was more mobility in the country. So people did move back to the countryside, those who were migrant workers when they lost jobs in the cities. Many of them moved back home to rural areas. And remember, 65% of India lives in villages. That's around 90 million population. And this is quite a large number. There's also, secondly, so when people went from cities to rural areas, they took the virus with them. But in the rural areas, the infections spread because there has not been as much of communication or effort to improve mask hygiene, social distancing, and also things like isolation centers, home. I met many people who admitted that they didn't know how to isolate at home. Many of them were also afraid of the stigma of COVID, so would not isolate even if they were COVID positive. And the third reason is that this, for the fast spread in rural areas, is that many of the infections now are happening in the midst of India's acute shortage of vaccines. So although there are more number of vaccine sites, there is places where people can go to get the jab, in rural areas, the supply has been skewed for the last 4 months to the urban centers. So they don't have access to vaccines to protect themselves from severe cases of COVID, which has meant that the death rate has been pretty high. And the last reason is that the infrastructure upgrade, like adding oxygen concentrators, putting more beds, creating COVID care centers for mild cases of COVID, all of these were focused again on cities which were the worst hit in the first part of the first wave last year in March 2020 to September, and also now in April, in March and April, it was concentrated in cities. So the efforts to fix this infrastructurally also were skewed to the cities. And now the rural areas are affected because of, in a way, negligence.
Right. Well, I can imagine a village's healthcare system must be under immense pressure, under the growing caseload, and it's something that you will address in your story tomorrow. Aside from that, Rohini, what more challenges do villages face in managing the pandemic compared with India's cities?
Asking health workers there, they had a litany of complaints actually, because they were really stressed trying to communicate to people in villages who are very afraid of COVID, but actually not serious enough about how to prevent it in terms of mask wearing, in terms of social distancing. Very little of this hygiene, cough etiquette, very little of this is followed. I followed a health worker in the Chamarajanagar district who was trying to visit a village to test people because in that village there were two people who had turned positive and one of them had died. So she wanted to go and test as many people as possible, especially the primary contacts and others in the village. But she said that people were running into the forest, people were going up the hills and also abusing her and chasing her away because people were afraid of being declared to have COVID. Secondly, many of them they live very far away from the centers where vaccines are given, and also are not fully sure. There is a lot of vaccine hesitancy. They're not sure what is the use of the vaccine. They're afraid of the fever and some of the side effects that come after taking the jab. So these fears have not been really addressed. There is a lot of effort happening from the government side now, focusing on rural areas. But these are some of the awareness gaps, infrastructural gaps, and also the shortage of resources in terms of manpower and also hospital infrastructure that are making the fight really hard in villages in India.
Well, Rohini, thank you so much for the update and for joining me today. That was Rohini Mohan, India correspondent for the Straits Times. And you can, of course, look out for her story in tomorrow's paper. Closer to home, Malaysia's first mega vaccination centre will begin operations on Monday, with priority given to some 2,600 senior citizens. Located at the Malaysia International Trade and Exhibition Centre in KL, the centre is expected to see over 5,000 people vaccinated daily. Malaysia reported a fourth straight day of record infections, with nearly 8,300 new cases today. And over in Australia, a day into its week-long lockdown, Victoria State reported 4 new locally transmitted cases today from 12 yesterday. From tomorrow night, travellers from Victoria coming into Singapore have to serve a 7-day SHN. Meanwhile, Australia's national carrier Qantas is considering rewarding fully vaccinated customers with incentives like frequent flyer points or flight vouchers. This to help boost vaccination rates in the country. Qantas has said all passengers must be vaccinated when it restarts international flights beyond New Zealand, but this policy has been called discriminatory by the World Travel and Tourism Council. Back home, Station Inspector Jeff Lim, one of the police officers who was accused of bullying an elderly woman in Yishun, has spoken out. He said that while the accusations were upsetting at first, he won't stop helping the public when duty calls, adding he's glad the truth is out about the incident. Posts on a personal Instagram account as well as on the Singapore Uncensored and the Online Citizen Asia websites had claimed that the officers had abused their authority in dealing with the woman, prompting Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam to invoke the fake news law, requiring these parties to carry correction notices for their posts on the incident. Meanwhile, TOC's application to cancel the POFMA order was rejected by Mr. Shanmugam. MHA said the video contained falsehoods alleging that police officers had taunted and reprimanded an elderly woman for not wearing a mask. Meanwhile, IMDA has ordered an offensive online poll on female Islamic teachers be removed from social media platforms here. The poll asked people to rank these religious teachers or ustaza according to their sexual attractiveness, which IMDA says, quote, promotes sexual violence or sexual activity involving coercion or non-consent. Such content is unacceptable and has no place here. Communications and Information Minister Josephine Teo has called out an altered image of an area in Lower Delta Road, which was set up for taxi drivers and delivery riders to dine in. As you saw earlier, the banner was altered to say dine-in area instead of the original dine-in area. Mrs. Teo is also MP for the ward where the designated area is located. And in a Facebook post, she said the word distortion was in poor taste, adding, please put your energies to better use. Even if you don't have the capacity to help others, don't spend your time and effort subtracting from it. They deserve better. And this is music to my ears. Jeremy Montero has become the very first musician from Singapore to break into the top 50 of the US jazz charts with the album Live at No Black Tie, Kuala Lumpur. Well, Jeremy joins me now from his studio.
Hi.
Many congratulations, Jeremy. What a fantastic, to say the least, achievement this is, and in the middle of a pandemic, no less. So tell us, how does it feel to be the first Singaporean to make this milestone, and how are you celebrating your accomplishment?
Thanks very much, Olivia. I'm glad. In fact, I'm really very excited that I, managed to get on the jazz charts. It's been a long time. I've had a 45-year long career. So it's waited a long time to achieve this milestone, and I hope that I will continue climbing up the charts. I've debuted at number 46, so hopefully the radio stations there will continue playing it. People will keep requesting it, and so it climbs up the charts. I'm not sure how I'm celebrating. Well, my friend invited me for dinner tonight, so now he says that's going to be the celebration, and he said, let's get drunk. I don't know about that. I don't drink that much, but certainly we'll celebrate.
Well, fingers crossed, of course, that you do climb up the charts. Well, the reviews for the album have been fantastic. What are your plans for the rest of the year, Jeremy?
Well, quite a lot. I pretty much wear two hats, although I'm wearing one now. I run help to run the Jazz Association Singapore, which is a charity and arts charity in Singapore, and we have quite a lot of exciting shows coming up. We have our Jazz It Up show coming up on the 20th of June on Father's Day, which is a celebration of Chinese songs done in the jazz way. I also am waiting to see whether approval to do a small show at the Goodbye Garden at the substation over the weekend of the 11th of June. Not sure whether the approval will come through, but if it does, I'll be there. And my live stream shows, I have my album project for the year. I'm sort of a workaholic, so I never stop. So hopefully people will continue to want to pay attention to me and what I do.
Well, that's for sure. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. And of course, congratulations once again. Before you go, our viewers will be in for a treat because you'll be playing us out. What song will you be playing from your new album?
Well, I'm going to play a song that's called Mount Olive. It's a really bright, swingy little tune dedicated to two great American musicians I had a band with for 20 years. It's called Mount Olive. And for you, Olivia?
Oh, wow, fabulous. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Take it away, Jeremy Montero. Everybody, do take care and thanks for watching.
Thank you. Enjoy.